sun. For millions of years, the source of life. But for one planet, the source of its demise. The temperatures climbed. The vast fields of ice at its poles melted, and the oceans rose. Centuries later, few people remain on this planet once called Earth. Among them, a man who still searches, a woman who still hopes, and a small child who carries the secret to a new beginning. In this place they know only as Waterworld.
Tina! Bring me the axe!
Put your right hand in the box.
Power tasting berry!
You want to see dry land?
No more Mr. Nice Duck.
Shogun of Harlem.
Gordon's alive. You talking about the damn shark's brother?
Welcome to Cherry Bombs, the underappreciated movies podcast. This is the show where we rip the scarlet letter off some unfairly maligned movies. I'm Dustin.
I'm Nick.
And this will probably be the most epic Cherry Bombs episode yet.
Absolutely.
We're already over schedule, actually. We were supposed to record last week, so it's fitting for this movie that we're behind the schedule. It's the ultimate bathtub toy movie, Waterworld.
I love that definition. Like, there's no better words for that than bathtub movie. There really
It is.
There really isn't.
It's the movie that you play when you're in the bathtub. It's that and Jaws, like the two bathtub toy movies, or in the pool.
Right.
What's your first experience with Waterworld?
You know, what's weird is I don't remember prior to seeing it why it was so important for me to see it, like why I was so excited to do so. I honestly couldn't tell you that, but I can tell you 100% that I called in sick to work to go see it. And I went in the afternoon to a theater called Northtown, just a handful of old people in there. And man, I love it. And more than the cherry bombs that we've talked about and that we will talk about, this one to me, I'm baffled on why people hate it as a end result. I mean, production stuff aside, why people don't like this movie baffles me.
It is a completely unique, one-of-a-kind movie. And everybody likes to say, oh, it's a Mad Max ripoff. Well, the whole post-apocalyptic genre is all of these elements across the board, whether it's
Right.
Mad Max movies or you're not going to say that Iron Man is Batman ripoff. You know, it's the genre.
Right.
So are there things similar, or does it inspired by, or is it sort of an evolution of the Mad Max movies? Obviously. That's not a bad thing, though. And I think for what it is, there's nothing else like it. There's no other movie.
Right, exactly. There's no other movie. There are lots of post-apocalyptic films out there that you can say, okay, Mad Max ripoff, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And, you know, while this may have borrowed from Mad Max, yet, like you said, there's nothing else like this.
No. And it's a blast. It's just a flat-out fun movie.
I love this movie so much.
My first experience with Waterworld was, again, in the theater. It was opening day. I looked at my ticket stubs because I actually had my ticket stubs from this period. I saw it on opening day, July 28th, 1995, at the Marcus Hillside Cinema at 3:30 p.m. on screen number 1.
That's awesome. I love that you have that ticket. I love that. I wish I would have done that. That's such a great idea.
So yeah, loved it, obviously, when I first saw it.
I mean, was there anything that you can remember of, like, other than it just being, you know, a movie in the theater and something new? Was there anything that, like, drew you to see this? Because, like, I truly don't remember.
Yeah. For me, I've always had a fascination with all things ocean and all things water related, you know, all the way back to Jaws. So something like this was, I mean, undersea life and all that stuff, that's always been right up my alley. So something like this was sort of the best of all worlds. It was like this big action, epic film set on water with sea monsters and with, I also always liked the cheesy water park stunt shows that you see at like Universal Studios or any
Sure.
of those kind of places.
Yeah.
This was literally a like filmed version of one of those water stunt shows at a theme park.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was like custom made for me, this movie, and it delivered.
Absolutely.
So Waterworld was originally envisioned by the screenwriter Peter Rader as a quick Roger Corman cheapie, ironically enough. He was offered to write and direct his own movie for Corman's New Horizons pictures back then. And they said, if you do a Mad Max knockoff, they basically asked for a Mad Max knockoff. And so he went off to write it, and he didn't really want to do the generic Mad Max knockoff. So he got the idea to set the whole thing on water. And he took it back and pitched it to them, and they were baffled, and they looked at him incredulously and said, "Are you insane? If we set this thing on water, it's going to cost like $3 million."
Oh, how little did they know.
So he basically gave up on New Horizons and said, because they won't finance this small version of this script, I'm just going to write the most insane, big budget Hollywood version of it instead, with no regard for what the budget would be. Which, in a way, probably is a good way to write a spec screenplay.
You can always cut down if you need to.
Exactly. You can always, and you know it's going to be rewritten no matter what. It's all going to get taken away.
Right.
Eventually, all the stuff that no one's going to do, and then if you're lucky, you'll kind of get down to the bones of what the idea was without cutting into the bone. But the original Mariner in his original script was called Noah, so it was a much more sort of biblical kind of take.
Yeah.
He was a loner, just like the Mariner is in Waterworld. He kept a white stallion on board his customized river barge. Which is not only an insane sort of story idea, but as a production headache. I can't even imagine if they would have had to deal with a horse on Waterworld. Helen was still the heroine, and she was named after Helen of Troy. The villain was called Neptune, who was a large man with a pointy beard and a forked staff. And he was surrounded by mutant henchmen.
With like lobster claws.
Yeah, a guy with a lobster claw called Lobster, and a sharp-toothed guy called Orca. I mean, that's kind of like the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff.
I guess so,
like
yeah.
Davy Jones and all that, but better.
Right.
And they lived on there was an atoll in the movie, but it was called the Oasis in the early script. The overall premise, of course, was the same, which was that due to, in this early versions, I believe it was a nuclear war. The polar ice caps had melted, the world was covered in water, and it was an undisclosed amount of time, far enough along that people had actually forgotten where they came from. So it was many, many, many generations on. So that was rewritten and toned back a little bit. It was a little bit less fantasy. And that version of the script, I actually have a copy of. Right off the bat, I can mention a few things. The Mariner had a name. His name was Morgan in that. He had a son who had been kidnapped from a young age by the smokers. The deacon was called Laszlo. It's nothing like the movie. It's completely, you can see how far away they eventually moved from the original drafts of the script, because it's still the Mariner. He's got the horse in this draft. Helen and Enola are still in the story. She still has a tattoo on her back, Enola, that is a map to dry land, but the events are completely different. So eventually they got this, I think it was this draft that ended up with the producer Charles Gordon. They had originally hired a director named Nils Gap, a Norwegian filmmaker, but he quit when the budget started to climb out of control. Somehow Kevin Costner got a hold of it and loved it and agreed to do it only if Kevin Reynolds would direct it.
So the two Kevins were pretty much like brothers, and like brothers, they do fight. So there had to be like this sort of intervention to bring them together and to work on this project, because it looks like they had some issues on when they were working on Robin Hood together, and so they had to agree to put their differences aside and then take on this epic film together.
Kevin Reynolds wanted to make it more of an eco fable, so it shifted away from this post-nuclear thing to to the environmental themes.
Which this movie, of course, based on that, this movie should be playing better than ever. Then there should be like re-releases.
Oh
in
yeah,
theaters with
I mean
this,
this is the inconvenient truth, but with action.
Man, that was a good movie. An inconvenient truth.
That is it. I'm getting myself a car that's environmentally friendly.
So Kevin Reynolds had directed, he directed Robin Hood, which I don't know about you, I love.
I love that one too.
He did Fandango with Costner. He did 187, which is a really underrated Sam Jackson movie.
Count of Monte Cristo.
That was a great movie. And then Tristan and Isolde, which was not.
Right.
But all in all, pretty solid filmography. He hasn't done a lot of movies, but the ones he's done, for the most part, pretty good movies. So the script at this point now was taken away from Peter Rader, as tends to happen when you sort of talk about big studio movies. They always want to bring in a new writer to give it a fresh take.
Yeah.
So they fall in love with the script, and then they're like, now we're going to change everything. They fired Peter Rader, and they hired David Toohey. And David Toohey had previously written Critters 2, Warlock with Julian Sands, and The Fugitive, Terminal Velocity, and then I think probably most known among genre fans, Pitch Black, and then later the sequels to Pitch Black, including the one where Judi Dench.
Wait, what?
You remember Judi Dench in the Chronicles of Riddick?
Oh my God, I so don't.
That's all I remember from the Chronicles of Riddick.
I don't remember much of all of that. I know we had a bad time.
So he rewrote it. I don't know how many drafts. Finally, as they were shooting, there were rewrites by Joss Whedon.
Yeah, he came in and did a lot of the Deacon's dialogue and stuff like that.
I remember reading, even back at the time, Joss Whedon was getting an obscene amount of money. He was supposed to come in for a week. They flew him to Hawaii. He was supposed to work for a week, and he ended up working for 7 weeks. So he ended up getting his 1 week insane salary every week for 7 weeks.
Man.
So I thought that is like the cushiest screenwriting job ever. You could probably retire on that kind of money.
Yeah, for sure.
And as I'm researching this, I'm finding this article that says Joss Whedon recalls spending 7 weeks of hell touching up the screenplay.
Come on.
Give me a break.
Come on. You were flown to Hawaii to write a movie a Mad Max movie on water. Like, come on. That's as good as it gets. Yeah.
You're getting paid that kind of money. Now you can go off and you can write whatever you want for as long as you want.
Exactly.
So Costner came on as producer.
Yep.
And they began to crew up for this movie. Dean Semler was hired as a director of photography. He did Young Guns, both Young Guns movies. Dead Calm, which is relevant to Waterworld in a sense because it's on water. City Slickers, Last Action Hero, Super Mario Brothers.
Super Mario Brothers. He also did Road Warrior and Thunderdome.
Yeah, most notably, he did Road Warrior and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and that relates directly. It either shows like incredible savvy on the part of the producers to bring in a guy who has experience making these kinds of movies, or just an incredible lack of imagination on their part. I don't know what, but he did an extraordinary job on
Yes.
this. I can't even imagine the challenges that he faced. It was edited by Peter Boyle, who cut a few of Costner movies in particular, and Kevin Reynolds movies, Robin Hood and Rapa Nui and Tristan and Isolde. Quills, which is a great forgotten movie.
Yes.
Jeffrey Rush and Kate Winslet.
Mm-hmm.
And he also edited The Postman.
The Postman.
Not Il Postino, but The Postman.
Right. And if anybody wants to complain about a summer blockbuster post-apocalyptic movie that sucks, y'all can have that one. But just leave Waterworld alone.
There used to be a postman for every street in America. They wore uniforms and hats, just like this one. Getting a letter made you feel like you were part of something bigger than yourself. I don't think we ever really understood what they meant to us until they were gone.
I picture there was somebody at some point who said, "Look, I got a great idea. We're going to do Waterworld with mail." Everyone was like, "Yes, it's on land. This will be great." You know, like what? The Mariner makes it to the mainland and decides to just deliver shit on your porch.
It could be the sequel. It could be the sequel to Waterworld. He decided to come back, and he had to get a job.
Land World. And the deacon is stealing packages off people's porches.
I want all mail carriers hunted down.
How about you? Do you have a letter?
I don't have anybody to write to.
I want the postman found. I want him dealt with.
How much mail can a dead postman deliver?
You hear me? Postman! I said ride!
You have a gift, postman. You give out hope like it was candy in your pocket.
The production designer on Waterworld was Dennis Gassner.
He did a lot of good movies.
He designed a ton of good movies, you know, in kind of a weird mix. Like he did Field of Dreams, Barton Fink. He did a lot of Coen Brothers movies. Truman Show, Golden Compass, the newest Blade Runner
Like
movie.
Father, Like Son.
Like Father, Like Son. And he worked on Apocalypse Now as well. And I actually met Dennis Gassner at a Oscars production design panel thing.
Really?
And I got him to sign my Waterworld.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I handed him the DVD, and he kind of looked at it, and he goes, "Oh, there's an old one." And I was like, yeah, it's a classic. And he kind of looked at me. And then I tried to make conversation with him, and I was like, "So what was harder to work on, Apocalypse Now or Waterworld?" And he goes, "They're all hard." He wasn't very chatty, but he didn't seem too excited to be signing Waterworld, which kind of disappointed me.
That's an awesome signature, though, you got on it. That's great.
Like, almost if you want to get a Waterworld autograph, that's kind of like the best one to get in a way, because it's one of the most defining characteristics of that movie is the production design.
Yeah.
You want to talk about casting?
Casting, sure, absolutely. Obviously, Kevin Costner's done a lot of great stuff. Wyatt Earp, JFK, Field of Dreams, Perfect World.
Yeah, Perfect World is great.
You know, of course, his Oscar-winning moments with Dances with Wolves.
Postman.
Well, we appreciate the effort. There was also, 3,000
Miles to Graceland.
With Kurt Russell.
Dragonfly,
yeah. So he's had his fair share of flops,
ups and downs.
Right, yeah. So he plays the Mariner in this. So he doesn't have an actual name. He's just referred to as the Mariner, which is great.
Yeah, the man with no name, basically.
Jean Triplehorn, who plays Helen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, things like Basic Instinct, The Firm with Tom Cruise, and most notably recently her series with Bill Paxton on Big Love. The girl that she protects is played by Tina Majorino, who is Enola, most known for Napoleon Dynamite, of course.
And here we have some boondoggle keychains, a must-have for this season's fashion.
Already made like affinity of those at Scout Camp.
The main villain of this was played by the great Dennis Hopper, who, of course, is, you know, in so many great films. Apocalypse Now, Speed, Blue Velvet, Easy Rider, True Romance.
I had a great time on this. I had the best living experience on this I've ever had. I'd never been to Hawaii. I would never give myself a holiday like this. And I end up on the Big Island and living between, I play golf, so I'm living between 3 golf courses. Very, very close, 5 minutes from me. I have a beautiful house on the beach, and I had quality time off because I'm the bad guy chasing Kevin. So when Kevin's on, I'm off, and I played some great golf, and I had some great work. I loved the work. I loved my performance in this, and I never saw any hassles. I never saw any arguments. I know it was difficult. I know it was expensive, but the movie, it's up there on the screen, and I'm very proud of the film.
So, like, one of the other, not main actors, but he's in there enough, is Michael Jeter, who plays Old Gregor, but he's only just called Gregor. But he was in lots of things. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Great cameo in that movie.
Yeah. He was in Fisher King. He was in Open Range with Kevin Costner. Patch Adams, if you like that.
Patch Adams does not deserve a director's cut. The first one was long enough.
Patch Adams, you're dead.
The original composer of Waterworld was Mark Isham, who had composed a bunch of movies, a bunch of good movies. Point Break, Home for the Holidays, Cool World, The Mist, and he composed Blade. He also composed one of your favorite movies, the Jodie Foster, Liam Neeson romance, Nell.
Okay, Miss Chickpea. Tie in the way.
Die in a wind.
Yes, nail and leg going to tie in the way.
And away. It's so awful. It's so awful.
Don't you own like every version of Nell on every format?
I do not, but there's some Photoshop things that would suggest otherwise. Oh my god.
At this point, the relations between Kevin Reynolds and Kevin Costner just basically shattered. He turned his cut in with this music and they said, change the music. We don't like the cut. Costner wanted a sort of more heroic score. So anyways, they brought in James Newton Howard to score, who, of course, as we discussed, did an amazing job. It's one of the great scores of the 90s. Filming for Waterworld started in Hawaii, off the port of Kauai, on June 27th, 1994. So, and they immediately fell behind schedule due to shooting on the water and just the complexity of it. Kevin Reynolds had said that he asked, before they started shooting, he asked Spielberg, should I shoot on the water? And Spielberg said he'd never do it again.
I don't think Spielberg has.
After Jaws. I don't think he has, no.
Right.
So, I mean, but how do you make the movie without shooting on the water, really?
Right.
I mean, now it would be done digitally.
Everything, right.
Everything would be done digitally, and then the movie would be way less special because there's something about the reality of it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, all the practical effects, the sets, the whole blah, it just makes everything so fantastic.
Costner said that the film, I don't know if this is true, this might be a little spin, but Costner said the film was always on budget. It was meant to be budgeted at $135 million, which it was, but the studio didn't want to be seen as spending that much money on a movie, so they told everybody that it was $65 million. So suddenly it was like, oh, well, they tripled the budget or they doubled the budget. It was supposed to be 65 and it ended up being 135 or whatever. But whether that's true or not, I don't know. If it's not true, it's an interesting spin.
The end result budget was what, 175, I believe, correct?
It still went over budget. Yeah, I mean, how do you not go over budget on a movie like that? It ended up being the most expensive movie ever made at that point. Of course, now that's pocket change compared to some of the Marvel.
I mean, even compared to Jaws, I mean, the scale of what they did on the water compared to Jaws.
Oh yeah, insane. I mean, it crushes Jaws in terms of scale.
Yeah.
So because they fell behind schedule, because it was a big bloated production, bad press started, and it plagued the movie all the way through the shoot. All this rumors and gossip, similar to the way Titanic was.
Yes.
Before that came, of course, when Titanic came out, all the tune shift. But because Waterworld didn't become this monster hit, it still is saddled with the same sort of perception that it had while it was shooting.
I think the media doesn't have anything better to do. There must not be much for them to do. You know, it's like the person who doesn't have anything to do in the neighborhood, so they just pick on people. You know, it's like, wow, you know, they should get a life. There's a lot of things to report on. I mean, they should relax and realize that Universal Studios, who's made movies for the last 60 years, was concerned enough about the movie that they didn't need to be. But it made for good, you know, fun press for them, and didn't make it so fun for people who really are out there trying to make movies for people.
On Friday, July 28th, Universal Pictures invites you to a world like none you've ever seen before. Kevin Costner, Waterworld, rated PG-13, starts July 28th.
Should we, again, the pun, should we dive in to Waterworld?
Oh, keep in mind, for our audience here also, we are going to talk specifically about the theatrical version of the movie. There is a extended TV version, and there's also one called the Ulysses cut, which is sort of their extended. So the Ulysses cut is like almost a 3-hour version of this movie.
The theatrical cut is the one that we fell in love with
Yes.
first. So, and that's also the one that has bad reputation and all that. So we're focusing exclusively on the theatrical cut. We will discuss a little bit the extended cuts, which are definitely worth discussing.
Yeah.
A little bit later.
So the movie opens up with the classic Universal logo, where the logo spins around the Earth, and then what's really cool about this one is that it starts to go into the planet, and you can see the continents getting swallowed up by water as the polar ice caps melt.
Yeah.
And what's interesting too is that the guy that's narrating it is actually the trailer guy's voice.
I
anyway.
know. I love that. I love that it basically just shows you the entire premise, so it visualizes the entire premise of the movie before you even got to the title screen. So immediately you get it. It's just a very simple concept. You either buy it or you don't, and I don't know why you wouldn't buy it, because it's just a fun concept.
Right.
The future. The polar ice caps have melted, covering the Earth with water. Those who survived have adapted to a new world.
And then that James Newton Howard score kicks in.
Yes.
And already you're like, wow, this movie is full of potential.
And to describe, so the movie pulls in then ocean landscape, obviously, and you see sailing in the middle of the ocean is the Mariners. Now I'm gonna probably mispronounce this, because like some people say it's supposed to be a trimaran, some people say it's a trimaran. I really don't know. I was gonna call
Trimaran.
Trimaran.
Combination of the two, I think.
Is that what it is? Okay. Which is it's has a very tall mast, and there's netting that separates 3 different hulls that are parallel to each other.
Right. So he's on the trimaran. Trimaran? Now you got me confused. What did I say it was? Trimaran? God, we got to get this right, because we're going to be saying this a lot. Trimaran?
Trimaran. Let's say trimaran. So the scene opens up with the Mariner peeing into a jar and then pouring that into this filtration system of, like, tubes and glass shaped things, and so he can essentially filter his own pee to be drinking water.
But in the original draft, this is how it reads in the original version. He pours the urine into the machine, and we follow its progress downwards through a paper filter, along a glass tube, down a rubber hose. Suddenly we come to something organic in the chain, a large, slimy, steaming kidney. The organ pulses with the flow of liquid, processing it, pumping it out into the mechanical remainder of the contraption, which concludes in a copper faucet. Somehow, a living organic kidney has been incorporated into this bizarre chain. But those familiar with anatomy will notice that it is backwards. The urine is being forced into the wrong end of the kidney. So awesome. That was the original version. So in a way, we were kind of spared that. So anybody that complains about Kevin Costner drinking his own pee, it could have been much worse.
Right.
I love this opening. It's like the perfect opening to this movie because it's totally off kilter and unexpected.
And also to describe this boat, which is just one of the coolest vehicles. I mean, it's this steampunk machine where the mast, pops out of the center hull, and he's got all these
transforming. It's like a transformer.
It is that's a great word for it. It's a transformer, and he's got these ropes and pulleys where he can swing from one side of the boat to the other. It's just like a gymnasium on water, really. I mean,
they built it from scratch. They built 2 of them in 5 months. One was like a racing one that was for the wide shots, like the effects one with all the transforming effects and stuff built into it. So this stuff was literally built into this vessel. It wasn't something that they did inserts and stuff on fake. It literally could do those things. And then right off the bat, I mean, he goes down below deck, and you're seeing this incredible detail and production design and costuming, and you're just getting the sense of a complete world. There's nothing. I mean, it goes without saying that there's something cheap about Waterworld, but you definitely see where the money's being spent on detail.
Yes. So as you mentioned, so he goes underwater for a while, leaving his boat unattended because obviously he's the only one that's on it.
Scavenging for supplies and things.
After he comes up with these pair of boots, he finds out that there's a drifter nearby.
What are you doing here?
Just waiting.
Take your hand off the sail. Take it off. I've seen your boat before. Haven't seen you.
But just as he realizes that this drifter has robbed his trimaran. Trimaran?
You just got to go with it, and people are just going to have to forgive us for all these different...
So just as he realizes this, they're attacked by smokers, who are basically pirates, like sea pirates, on jet skis.
They're dirty, they're covered in oil and just greasy, and they have these jet skis that just are just smoking oil. And
yeah, the smokers are the villains of the movie.
Smokers? Just enough wind to get away clean.
And they look amazing. They're basically, how would you describe them?
I mean, like Hell's Angels of the sea. And it speaks to also sort of the eco thing too as well, because like, you know, the Mariner has this ship that's got sails and is very clean and neat, whereas the smokers are just gushing oil and gas, you know, into the water.
Right off the bat, yeah, it's exactly. The Mariner seems very at one with his environment.
Yeah.
And the smokers, yeah, they're belching smoke and they're spilling oil everywhere. And not only that, but they're you know, self-destructive in themselves with all their smoking and drinking and killing. And there's definitely a lot of subtext going on there. I think you could say, you know, right off the bat that the smokers could represent climate change deniers. In fact, I think Kevin Reynolds said that in the documentary on the Blu-ray, that they're basically the equivalent of climate change deniers, ignorant and destructive to their own world and selfish and wasteful. I mean, they perfectly embody that. And I think that's obviously more relevant now, some 25 years now, 24 years later, even than it was back then.
Right. And so for the first time, you get to see the Mariner shapeshift his boat. And he's using different cranks and pulleys and swinging around the boat to raise the sail and everything, because his ship can move fast.
And we should mention this is the first time that James Newton Howard's heroic Mariner score kicks in.
Yes, that swashbuckling score.
The smokers give chase, but they eventually stop and take the easy pickings, basically. Yeah. They are well armed, and they have a lot of ammunition, which has been a point of contention for people that like to trash Waterworld. It turns out that they manufacture their own bullets by tearing apart their own ship and melting it down and molding it into bullets. There's a lot of commentary there, too.
Right.
That they're literally prioritizing these weapons and in the process destroying their own community, literally.
Yeah.
So the Mariner arrives at an atoll, which is a giant, basically floating city. What they did, the production team, was they had stitched 8 separate giant flotation barges together in a big circle.
Which could rotate.
The flooring all around it was steel mesh decking, because apparently as little as 2 inches of water spilled over the top of it, it would lower the water line enough that it could capsize the whole thing.
Crazy.
They had 20 safety divers in the lagoon the whole time in case people fell in. But it was basically a giant floating city with a big gate that swings open to let in traders, basically.
Right.
And they let in the Mariner.
Flags down, Drifter. We got enough traders.
But what he shows them, which is a high commodity, is he shows them a jar full of dry dirt.
Dirt!
And then they let him in because everybody wants that.
We also get a good look at the whole atoll culture as he comes in. And it's, again, a whole civilization. There's a funeral going on with some kind of a mysterious burial ceremony. There's a giant shark with an even bigger bite taken out of it.
Yes.
The Mariner trades his dirt for some chits, which is the form of
currency.
And he also trades in for some water and for a tomato plant at a little sad little store run by Helen.
Help you.
Yeah. Where's the store?
You found it.
You don't have much.
We also briefly see Enola, and we briefly see the tattoo on her back, not knowing exactly what that is, but it's clear that Helen does not want anyone to see it. So the Mariner does his business, he's getting ready to leave, and the Atoll elders stop him.
I've got a proposition for you, Mariner.
I'm not staying.
Oh, we're not asking you to. All we want is your seed.
We can look to our own for impregnation, but too much of that sort of thing gets undesirable.
Mariner's totally not into it.
Yeah, he's like, no, that's right. I'm good. So when he tries to leave, they stop him, and one of the gatekeeper notices that behind his ears he has gills.
Mutation!
So they all freak out. And they net him like a fish.
He has killed one of us.
He was defending himself.
He needs to be destroyed.
That may be,
Kill him.
but not here, and not like this.
So they lock him up in a cage, and that night, an eccentric inventor named Old Gregor sneaks up to try to get some answers from him.
Anyway, I come here because I need to ask you a question. Where did your dirt come from? Is it from dry land?
Mariner's not talking. The next morning, everyone's gathered for the execution of the Mariner.
It is our decision that this mutoid does indeed constitute a threat. Therefore, in the interest of public safety, he is hereby sentenced to be recycled.
As they begin to lower him into the sludge,
Smokers attack, yeah.
Smokers! Get out of the sun! To your farm!
Which is this awesome military artillery of boats and things. Like, it's just these different ships and jet skis and ramps.
it's a full-scale, like, theme park stunt show, basically.
Yeah.
And it's the action set piece of the whole movie. Just massive, epic shots showing the scale of the production design and how big the sets actually are. I mean, they're there for real. There's early elements of CG going on, I'm sure, but basically this is all physical, live, real photograph stuff.
We are safe behind this wall!
Aren't we?
They kind of forget about the Mariner and start defending themselves. And then we get our first peek at the Deacon.
Give me the key to the city now.
They pull their ramps close to the atoll so the jet skis can jump over and get into the atoll.
Isn't there one that goes underwater? And
Yeah,
goes
so there's a
under
couple of the jet skis that just kind of like just full dive under and pop out in the middle of the atoll, which is just awesome.
In the middle of all this chaos, Old Gregor accidentally triggers his hot air balloon contraption, which begins to inflate.
You're not supposed to go yet! Infernal machine!
He takes off. He jumps in. He can't stop it, and he floats away. Mercifully for the audience.
I'm sorry! It was an accident!
Enola and Helen are left behind, but they see that the Mariner is sinking in his little cage. So they think that this is going to be their way out.
If I let you out of here, you're taking us with you.
Sure. So they escape the atoll. The Mariner spears the side of a smoker gunboat
Pulling him right into us!
and spins it around in a way that it takes out Deacon's boat. Then the Mariner and Helen and Enola escape together on the Trimarin into the open ocean.
Adios, cousins.
back on the atoll post attack.
Yeah, they've taken over.
Yeah, the smokers have taken over. The Deacon's interrogating a couple of atoller prisoners.
You'll notice the arterial nature of the blood coming from the hole in my head. You can assume that we're all having a real lousy day. So here it is. I need to know about that tattooed girl. First one that tells me lives.
Hi, it's a girl. I saw it. I'm not sure it was. I'm not sure it was smoking, but I think.
You won. Start over.
We find out that they're looking for this girl with this map, what they think might be a map to dry land on her back.
She got her boat with 3 houses. Boat that cost me 1,000 G's to go, Juice?
Yeah, the Muto's boat.
Muto?
Yeah, he got this slits here, like fish scales. He wasn't really a man. A fluke of evolution.
I'm sorry, a fluke of evolution. I know.
I thought this was interesting. Is the Deacon a creationist?
Oh.
Because he seems either confused or dismissive of the word evolution. We know he's a religious zealot, and he later on refers to the Mariner as the sperm of the devil.
That's very possible.
Take up that skyboat, send it out on patrol. We gotta keep an eye out for that icky freak.
So, in the next scene, the Mariner threatens to toss Enola over the side so that he can conserve water. And Helen offers her body to him.
She says, look, you've been at sea a long time. Why don't you and I just, kind of like hook up for a moment here? You haven't seen a woman. Let's get it on.
No, she wasn't doing it out of because she wanted to.
No, she's doing it as a trade of like, you let us stay on your boat. I'll give you myself to you.
Know what I was really thinking? Why don't drop both of you in my wake right now? You got nothing I need.
Then she grabs a spear gun, in fear that he was gonna do it anyway. But it's a great moment too because he collapses the sail on her, so she can't shoot him. And he takes his oar and just cracks her in the head, which is just. I mean, I know like a lot of women today would be like, oh, that's awful, but
Well, I mean, it is awful.
Well, I mean,
I don't think anyone's going to argue that it's not awful.
Well, I don't know. He's got a spear point him on his own boat. He's got to defend himself.
Maybe later we can defend the behavior of the Mariner when it comes to how he's dealing with this obnoxious child. But at this point, maybe he's a little over the line. I think we can agree on that point. Maybe.
I guess. I mean,
he's already dropped the sail on
right.
her. Okay. So she's not going to shoot him with the spear gun. So I think maybe the paddle was a little bit overkill. I will say though this about the Mariner, you know who the guy is when he does this. So I'll defend that moment based on the fact that this is who this character. Clearly, he's not just going to drop the sail on her. He's going to bash her head with an oar.
Right.
He's not messing around.
Exactly.
So the stakes are certainly set.
Right. He doesn't trust anybody. He's a loner.
Because he's an unpleasant son of a bitch,
right?
The Mariner. But that's the whole point, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think anyone's going to defend his actions, smashing of the head, based on that she had it coming or something.
I mean, it's not like he was like beating her with a bat severely. He just hit her in the head, so she dropped a spear gun. It's not.
I feel like your wife might disagree with your point of view on this one.
Let me see here. Hold on.
Hi.
Hello.
What's up?
You're live on the podcast right now, but we have a question to ask you. So when we were watching Waterworld, right?
Yes.
There's the scene where Helen offers herself to the Mariner, and he declines, and then she grabs a spear gun. So then he collapses the sail on her, and then he grabs an oar and whacks her in the head.
I don't think it was necessary.
Because Dusty feels that it was an unnecessary blow to the head.
Yeah, that's what I said. I thought it was unnecessary.
You can't judge the Mariner. I mean, somebody's aiming his own weapon at him on his boat.
She had already disoriented her by dropping the sail on her. Yes, I do believe the word to the head was a bastard move. I think it was absolutely unnecessary. He was being a dick.
I see.
You're putting me on the podcast?
So then we finally get to the D's, which is a massive oil tanker, which is the smoker's home base. The deacon gets chauffeured through the oil tanker in a car down to the access hole for the actual oil tanks, where he's told that they're starting to run low on oil. This is where we meet the ancient, the depth gauge guy.
Hi up there! Take it off!
Yeah.
He's an old, ancient, skinny, sickly man that's sitting in a tiny boat for his whole life at the bottom of this oil tank, floating on the oil and giving them updates.
Yes! Your deacon ship. Hello. Good morning. Or night, whichever the case may be.
What is it? I'm a busy man.
I thought you should know. We're down to exactly 4 feet, 9 inches of black stuff.
So yeah, now we know that they're running out of oil, so the deacon really needs to find dry land before they're literally dead in the water.
All right. The only thing that is important is the tattooed girl. We don't spare any goat juice finding her. We don't waste it anywhere else. You cancel all those tractor pulls and all that stuff until later.
So we cut back to the mariner, discovering that Enola has been playing with his crayons, and he gets pissed.
Yeah, she's drawn on his boat pictures and stuff.
Where'd you get this?
From down below.
This is mine. You don't touch anything of mine.
Well, I drew it for you.
You don't draw on anything. You understand?
He does have a point here. I will definitely defend the mariner in this case. Because once she gets into his stuff and starts messing around with it, and then like vandalizing his boat, no, I can definitely understand his attitude towards her.
This is my boat. I got it the way I like it. You take up space and you slow me down.
She just continues to be a pain in the ass, harassing him while he's minding his own business. He's just enjoying some tomato plant leaves.
Right. She just keeps yapping at him.
I'm not afraid of you. I told Helen you wouldn't be so ugly if you cut your hair.
He gets sick of her yammering and he throws her overboard.
Which is great.
In fact, you talk all the time. Storm when you're around.
Noah! Hey! What are you doing?
Helen jumps in after her.
So when he throws Enola overboard, before she dives in to get her, she's like, she can't swim, and she just gives a nice, just hauls off and just slaps him across the face and then dives in.
Bastard! She can't swim!
Well, good. See, she's evening the odds. I mean, she probably should have just gone at him with an oar.
Mariner 1, Helen 1.
This is an abusive relationship, and then they end up a couple at the end?
Yeah.
That seems, I don't know. I'm starting to get uncomfortable with Waterworld the more we're analyzing it.
You ever touch her again, son of a bitch. Look at me. We'll go to bed that night, and you will never wake up.
Shut up.
What? Smokers?
Yeah.
So the smoker plane comes in, and Helen fires a spear gun at it. This is her own idea. Inadvertently ends up tethering the trimaran to the plane. The mariner is scrambling to try to cut the line before it pulls the boat over. Finally, the tether snaps, and the mariner is hurled backwards into the ocean. Great shot. Great stunt there. Again, real life, real world stunt of a guy falling off the top of a mast. I don't know how many feet up in the air and hitting the ocean backwards.
Right, like 30 feet.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So in order to try to keep this episode from being any more bloated than it already is, we're just going to really quick skim over the next scene. They come across a drifter played weirdly and creepily by Kim Coates, who offers to exchange things for the services of Helen.
Let yourself way harm going there now, don't you? What you want for the women?
You're not for sale.
Not for sale. I mean, there's no such thing as not for sale. Not for sale. Not for sale. Eh?
Mariner initially agrees to this creepy deal despite Helen's objections, and then he comes around and gets a conscience and kills the drifter and throws him off the boat. Next, we get to see how the mariner catches his food in Waterworld, which consists of tethering himself to the boat and hurling himself off the boat like bait.
and then he gets swallowed up by like this huge, like fish.
Yeah, it's great because it's one of the only examples of sea life that we see
Yeah,
in
actually, it's
Waterworld,
true.
but it's enough to suggest that there's all kinds of other mutations out there. I always love this, even though people could complain it's CG or what fake looking. It is early
Yeah.
CG, but it happens so fast, and the design of the whale fin is so unusual that you can't quite process exactly what you're looking at, and it's over before
Yeah.
you know it. So it totally works. Actually, that's probably the trick to good CG is that it's only on screen for a couple of seconds at a time.
So he gets swallowed up by this fish, and then he spears the fish, kills it, and now they're eating like kings. He's got like this grill, and he's got this big piece of meat that he keeps flipping over on it. So everybody's eating, everybody's happy, and Enola notices his webbed feet.
Wish I had feet like his. Then maybe I could swim.
So we find out that Enola can't swim, which is pretty much unheard of in Waterworld. But as an audience, I think we know it's probably because she's from dry land.
Right.
So she wasn't born into this. There's a little bit of exposition. We learn that Helen is not Enola's mother, and that Enola was considered to be a freak when she was on the atoll. And I think that this is the moment when the Mariner can now relate to this little girl because he feels like the freak too.
Right.
And this is where the initial connection, and probably the key relationship in the movie. Well, it is the key relationship in all of Waterworld. This is the connection between Enola and the Mariner.
Right.
Never met a person who couldn't swim before.
I can't. People said I was weird.
Maybe they're right.
Maybe they were right about you, too.
And the next morning, the Mariner teaches Enola to swim, and they bond.
Hands around my neck. Let the water tell your arms and legs how to move. They're going down. Hold your breath.
Helen watches them from the boat. It's sort of like a little family moment. It's kind of like Sarah Connor watching the Terminator and John Connor give high fives in T2. It's that moment.
That's a great comparison. Yeah, that's exactly that.
She's like, if this fish man can learn the value of human life.
Maybe one day we can.
In an insane world, it was the sanest choice.
So then they come upon a slave colony, which turns out to be a smoker trap, which Mariner discovers by using his awesome underwater periscope, and he spots a bunch of jet skis with drivers like anchored just below the colony platform, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Smokers attack. They try to catch the whole, I don't know what their thinking is, but they're trying to catch the whole trimaran in a net. There's some fancy moves. The Mariner evades them, and then he blasts like a kite-like sail into the sky, which pulls them clear of the attack and to safety. But as they're leaving, the Deacon shoots the Mariner in the back. And when he sees him bleeding through his binoculars, the Deacon orders the release of the trackers. I don't know about you, but I always felt like the trackers, which end up being sharks, could have had a lot more to do in this movie. I would have liked to see more tracker stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
So the Mariner becomes convinced that the smokers are after Enola, and when he pushes Helen about it, she finally admits that the tattoo on Enola's back is thought to be the map to dry land.
It doesn't exist!
Well, how can you be so sure?
Because I've sailed farther than most have dreamed. And I've never seen it.
There are things on your boat that nobody has ever seen. What? Not from dry land, and where? Where?
You want to see dry land? You really want to see it?
So he puts her in a makeshift diving bell and swims her down to the bottom of the ocean, which is basically, it's the submerged city of Denver below them. It's a very cool sort of sci-fi scene. They swim over the rooftops and dropping flares down to illuminate things. Apparently, there's a lot of like little Easter eggs. Did you read about this? Little Easter eggs built into
the underwater. Yeah, like there's the orca.
The orca, yeah, from Jaws.
Right.
There's Randy's Donuts. There's a spinner from Blade Runner. There's the glider from Escape from New York, the helicopter from Die Hard.
Is there really the helicopter from Die Hard in there?
Yep, and the bat boat from Batman Returns.
Oh my god!
They're all in there. They're covered in barnacles and stuff, so it's probably almost impossible to pick them out. But they were all built into the miniature.
Oh, that's awesome! I had no idea that the bat boat was in there. That's awesome.
So meanwhile, up on the surface, tracker sharks are circling the trimaran, and when Mariner and Helen surface, they realize that they're surrounded by smokers.
Proper introductions first. I'm the deacon.
Smokers kidnap Enola.
What about Pep? Doing both. Torch the boat.
The Mariner escapes with Helen, breathing underwater for her in a sort of pseudo kiss.
So she can use his gills and...
Exactly. And what does that remind you of?
Splash.
Shape of Water, I was going to say, but Splash
too,
yeah.
Yeah, Shape of Water too, for sure.
It's literally like the last shot of Shape of Water. Back on the D's, the Deacon is getting creepy with Enola.
You want to come over here and sit on my lap? No? How about a cigarette? Nothing like a good smoke if you miss your mom.
He asks about her tattoo.
Have you ever heard any of your friends talk about it? You know, like your mommy or your pet fish? He say anything?
Shouldn't make fun of him. He wouldn't like it.
Girl, I don't give a shit what he'd like. He took out my eye. And if I ever see him again, I'm gonna cut open his head and I'm gonna eat his brain.
She's not going to help, and then she's convinced that the Mariner's going to come and save her.
Can't kill him. He's even meaner than you are.
But he's not here, and no one's gonna save you.
He'll come for me. He will.
Well, then you better tell me what I want to know. Or he can save what's left of you in a goddamn jar.
And apparently, there's an interview with Tina Majorino where she said, I'll always remember the times in makeup when Dennis Hopper was telling me about Apocalypse Now and not knowing what he was talking about. I was 9, and I couldn't understand. I love that.
Right?
I love that Hopper is telling Tina Majorino, a 9-year-old, about the wild, drug-addled times on Apocalypse Now.
Why did you say that to him in the scene?
I do, but you see, the director says, you don't know your lines. And then, like,
well, if you know your lines, then you can forget them. Oh, you know more or less.
I see. But that's what I'm trying to do. Forget those lines.
No, but it's no fair to forget them if you never knew them.
Helen and the Mariner are alone on the remains of the Trimaran.
Yeah, because now it's just been blown up, set on fire, so they're sitting on one of the floating hulls, and she's afraid that she's never going to see Enola again. Or she asked the Mariner, and she's just like, but before, when I offered myself, why didn't you take me? And he was like,
because you didn't really want me. Not really.
And that ends up being a turn on for Helen. And then she starts, getting close with the Mariner, and then they get it on. So you really don't see anything in here. There's no more nudity or anything like that. So that's unfortunate, but well, we already had ass. Why can't we have more ass or something here? But no.
Do you really want to see a love scene between a fishman and...
I don't know. I mean, we do in Shape of Water, so why is it anything different, really truly different in this? But so then we have this overhead shot of them getting it on while the Trimaran is smoking and falling apart. Afterwards, he goes below deck into the water.
Digs out his old stash of National Geographic magazines.
Yeah, comparing to her drawing, Enola's drawings, realizing that, oh my God, she has been to something called dry land.
And then...
your favorite person comes back.
No, Helen's above you!
So Gregor just happens to be floating overhead.
I'll throw the rope down. You catch it, I'll help you climb up.
And he says that he found him because of the smoking boat.
Yeah, I wonder how long he was hanging around up there.
Right? He's just watching him get it on, and before he says anything, he's just watching this sex show on this boat. Because Gregor's always wanted to see Helen naked, and now he has his opportunity. We've added this whole new creepness factor to Gregor. So he's witnessed this sexual fish act going on. And once everybody's dressed, he's like, "Hey, how's it going, everybody?" So he picks him up and he takes him over to the remaining survivors of the atoll, where the enforcer is on there. Gregor, a couple of the survivors are on there. The mariner decides that he's going to go save Enola.
She's alive. I'll bring her back to you.
Forget about the Muto, Helen. If he brings her back here, they'll kill us all. I can't stand it. We gotta go help him. I can't ask him to do this alone.
Oh, don't worry, my dear. You're not going to have to.
So we cut back to the D's, and they're trying to figure out what the tattoo on Enola's back is. The deacon directly addresses the portrait of Joseph Hazelwood, who was the captain of the Exxon Valdez, who ran the tanker aground into a reef and spilled, 11 million gallons of oil into Prince William Sound in Alaska in real life.
Crazy.
For those that don't remember.
St. Joe were close. After centuries of shame.
So the mariner sneaks aboard the D's and hunts for Enola, killing smokers along the way. There's kind of a weird rhythm to this section, and you could definitely tell that they cut down a lot of this for time.
Rise up, brothers and sisters! Turn your eyes and open your hearts to your humble benefactor, your spiritual shepherd and dictator for life, the deacon of the D's.
So meanwhile, the deacon gives an inspirational sort of campaign-style speech to a deck packed with hundreds of smokers.
Citizens of the good ship, please now hear me speak. I've had a vision.
He throws some smeat, cans of
Smeat, which is essentially spam.
Sort of just satiate the masses. It's sort of like a Morton Joe. My friend David J. Moore, who wrote a great essay in the Arrow Video Blu-ray special edition set.
Yeah, that's a great read.
He had mentioned to me after he saw Mad Max Fury Road, and he talks about this in his essay as well, the similarities between Fury Road and Waterworld. And that was definitely one of them. There's a sort of a Morton Joe quality to the deacon in the way that he just gives everybody just enough,
right,
to keep them under control. Well, here's some cigarettes and here's some smeat.
Yeah.
So the deacon's raving about they're going to pillage the land and dam the rivers and cut down the trees. Just basically exactly what you would expect that the smokers would do if they ever found dry land, which is destroy it.
We shall suck and savor the sweet flavor of dry land. And before the holy most moment is upon us, let's sacrifice one to old St. Joe, and let's get this tub of shit up to speed.
So the deacon rallies his smokers to row the entire ship toward dry land. Basically, he's trying to buy himself time until he can figure out the map. So they all go below decks, and huge oars come out the sides of the Exxon Valdez, and they literally are rowing this oil tanker. So the mariner arrives on what is now an empty deck, stands before the deacon and his cronies and Enola.
It's him.
It is him. You guys are in so much trouble.
Enola gloats a little bit, and the deacon smacks her in the head.
It's a fun slap, though. It's not just for the crowd because he didn't like the oar thing, but this is sort of like a tap slap. Like he doesn't punch her to face or anything like that.
I love how you defend all the slaps.
Well, I'm trying. I mean, this isn't Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts, like she's getting beat for it.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
No, it's not. Not at all. I'm sorry, it's not.
Well, I'll be damned. It's the gentleman Guppy.
I want the girl. That's all.
Well, what on this screwed up earth makes you think that you're gonna get her?
The mariner's standing over one of the ports that leads right down into the oil. So he opens up this flare and holds it over it and threatens to drop it.
He's flying!
Drops the flare down into the oil tank. First, he takes out the long-suffering depth gauge guy.
Yeah, he's like so glad to die. Once he sees the explosion, he's like, "Oh, thank God!
Oh, thank God!"
And it just blows up.
Blows out the lower decks of the D's and starts the whole tanker on fire. The Deacon grabs Enola and he tries to escape on the plane. The Mariner slides down a zip line, actual Costner sliding down the zip line, hooks the plane, and then crashes it back down on the deck, which was an actual plane, again, crashing on the actual deck that they built.
Yeah.
Gregor arrives, peeping Tom, in his balloon with Helen as the D's is sinking.
Hurry, Gregor!
Don't worry!
They toss down a rope, pulling up the Mariner and Enola, and we see the D's slip beneath the waves, and we finally get confirmation, as if there was any doubt, that it is in fact the Exxon Valdez. Which, you gotta say, that is a very bold, I can't see that ever happening in a movie now. That's a very bold image and statement for a $200 million studio blockbuster.
Yeah, because that's the last image you see is just that the name on it going down in the water.
That is just a big fat statement, and I just cannot see that ever happening in a big movie now. Huge credit to the movie for having the balls to do that. Enola falls off the balloon and plunges into the sea, but luckily she can swim now, thanks to Mariner. Mariner rigs up a cord, kind of bungee jumps down off of the balloon, grabs Enola, and bungees back up as 3 converging jet skis collide and explode beneath them.
One, of course, being the Deacon.
Yes, one is the Deacon, who at this point now is dead. Gregor translates the map after that, and they fly towards dry land. So later, we don't know how much time's passed. We can imagine it was days because they're going from the Denver area to what it will eventually be the Far East. The Mariner wakes up to see a seagull sitting on the airship. And then, through the clouds, there it is.
Dry land.
So they climb their way onto the beach, and they can barely walk because it's, they've spent their entire life at sea, so they have no land legs at all. They find a hut with some skeletons who turn out to probably be Enola's parents. But that's kind of confirmed when she finds a music box there and she plays the tune and she remembers it.
I'm home.
In fact, these are Enola's parents, the ones that set her adrift. And actually, there's a reason why they were set adrift.
My guess is that they were sick, right?
In the early draft, in the Peter Rader draft, it's explained that there was something called black bone. Enola says, "What's black bone?" And Helen says, "A plague just before you were born. It wiped out whole flotillas. All their bones became black." It is suggested that her parents knew that they had black bone, and they set her out so she wouldn't catch it. So not in the movie. We don't need it, but it's just an interesting little piece of backstory.
That's nice. Okay.
So they see horses. The Mariner sees horses running. Again, a remnant of the old draft, because that is also in the old draft, which is meant to be a callback to that white stallion that he has on his barge in the early versions, because that horse dies in that version and is eaten by the smokers. He is killed and eaten by the smokers in the original draft.
Oh, man.
In the original draft, he still sees the horses, but it has more resonance because he remembers his friend, the horse.
Right.
So the Mariner, despite the fact that they found dry land, feels out of place. This is not his world. He has a goodbye scene with Enola.
Enola, I have to go now.
You came back for me.
I like you.
Why are you leaving?
I don't belong here. I belong out there.
You belong here.
It's too strange here. It doesn't move right.
And he says goodbye to Helen with a different kind of kiss. And then the Mariner sets out again on the Trimaran. Trimaran?
So I actually looked this up on YouTube to see what the proper pronunciation is, and to me, it's really weird. It's actually Trimaran.
No, we're not going to Trimaran. That's ridiculous.
Right. No, I get you. I'm just saying, like, I looked it up on two things of pronunciation of this word, and that's how it came up was Trimaran. And I'm like, oh, I don't even like that. So I was going to call it the Trimaran.
Trimaran is good. Trimaran. Anyways, we're killing this dramatic moment here by talking about the pronunciation. The Mariner sails off, and Helen and Enola climb to the tallest peak on the island, and they watch him go, and the credits roll. Now, originally...
I love this, what you're going to say here. I love this.
And this was so amazing, and it's in the early drafts, and it was removed, and it's restored for the extended version. It was shot. Is that they're standing on Mount Everest.
Oh, cool.
So we know that this is literally the top of the world.
Right.
So there it is. Waterworld.
So good.
It's a bathtub toy epic.
This summer, Universal Pictures presents a world unlike any you have ever seen. Kevin Costner, Dennis Hopper, Gene Triplehorn. Waterworld.
So finally, we're back to an episode where there were some toys created.
They have the Trimaran, which is huge. It's a huge toy.
That Trimaran is amazing.
Yeah, it's very cool. And then they had a bunch of figures. They had a bunch of different mariners. They had the Atoll Enforcer. They had Nord. They had Deacon. They had a Wave Ripper and a Smoker Thunder. So different types of ski boats and ski jets and things. And you know what's funny about the Trimaran on the box? It says, "Do not put in water."
Why wouldn't you put it in water? That's the whole
exactly.
point.
Like it's just like, to me, would be so deflated.
It's not called Carpet World. It's called Waterworld.
Right. Exactly.
It floats. I can tell you for a fact it floats.
There should have been an Exxon Valdez toy. There should have been
the Exxon would have been like the aircraft carrier G.I. Joe thing, where it was literally like,
oh my god,
bigger than a kitchen table.
It would have been like the holy grail of toys, and oh my god.
There's a board game. There's trading cards. There was a Super Nintendo video game, which looks great.
Awesome! It is like this great It looks like this great combination between like Final Fantasy, Contra, and like Super Mario for like when you go underwater and stuff like that.
Virtual Boy game, a pinball machine with basically, it sounds like it's just Dennis Hopper yelling at you the whole time. And then, kind of most interestingly, there was a CD-ROM PC game called Waterworld: The Quest for Dry Land that had scenes that were filmed specifically for the game.
For the game, yeah.
Including actors from the movie. None of the main actors, but like the Enforcer.
Yep.
And a couple others. It was shot, it's like a $40,000 budget. There's footage from the movie in it. There's cutscenes. You can watch the cutscenes online.
What, Chief? We can't go on like this. Scavenging. Waiting for Hydro to fall from a cloudless sky. This morning a drifter sailed past and I stopped him and arranged a battle. I gave him almost all our remaining dead in Hydro. In exchange, he gave us the location of another atoll, a day's wind away. We've set sail for there. And if they won't accept us, I mean for us to take it by force. I've done what I had to do. Now it's up to you.
Oddly, though, it was not released until 1997. So, as if it wasn't bad enough that they had spent all this money to make this PC Waterworld game in '95, that everybody was laughing at the movie. Wait 2 years and release it when nobody even remembers the movie.
Atlas! Atlas! The chosen ones! Those of us who have survived the long journey now see our destiny clear before us. Dry land is not a myth, it exists.
The film premiered at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood.
And the producer said during that screening that people loved it.
Yeah.
That they were cheering and standing up and applauding and this and that, like, you know, during the action scenes and stuff like that. So it started off like it was going to be fantastic.
It was released July 28th, 1995.
3 weeks later than scheduled, and Waterworld finally opened in the States at the weekend. A certain curiosity value boosted its opening weekend take to a respectable $21 million.
Yeah, I don't understand why the critics dogged it. It's such a great movie.
It opened @1 at the box office with 21 million, which these days sounds like it tanked.
Right.
But adjusted, not so bad. It beat out The Net, which was the other new movie that week. Apollo 13 was number 3, Clueless was number 4, and 9 Months was number 5. Total domestic box office, domestic was about 88 million. International, it raked in 176 million. So total worldwide box office, 264.
Yeah. So, I mean, eventually it made its money.
And that's not something that's well known. People assume that the movie lost all kinds of money, but in fact, it did make back its money. So, again, the thing about this podcast is that we're talking about movies that have a perception of something's tainted about them or something's wrong with them.
Yep.
And there's a huge perception that Waterworld was this giant turkey that lost millions of dollars and that everybody hates. Well, not everybody hates it. We love it. And it also didn't lose money. So it's a cherry bomb in that sense, in that it's actually not really a bomb at all.
Yeah. I mean, everyone that I got to watch it with for the first time, they always like, oh God, Waterworld. Like, have you seen it? No. Okay, let's watch it together. And they come out and they go, that was actually pretty good. And it's like, well, yeah, it is. It's a great movie.
That's the reaction is always surprise that it's good. And I feel like that's got so much to do with the negative press and the negative cloud that was hung over that movie that had nothing to do with the movie or with the people making.
Well, it's an intrusion for us, and I think it's actually an intrusion for people who are willing to pay money to go see a movie, because now they've been told bad information, and I myself don't like being told what to think, and I think most people are really like that. They don't like people telling you what to think, and as it turns out, that information hasn't been good, and so that makes you even more angry that perhaps there might be some people that won't ever get to see this movie based on what some idiot said.
There were some good reviews. Newsweek, the same publication that claimed that Costner was adding digital hair to his bald spots, said that it was a pretty damn good summer movie, a breezy, clever entertainment with stirring effects. The negative reviews all seem to be preoccupied with the budget. And I'm sure all the reviews mentioned it at some point, but the ones that were negative really, really pushed it. Dolores Barclay, Associated Press. Waterworld was considered the most expensive film ever made, and one of the most problem-plagued too, given the expense of Waterworld at an estimated $175 million. The movie's second unit work, the action shots, are surprisingly uninspired and ordinary. And then she nails him at the end. Costner, whose last 3 movies flopped, produced Waterworld. So you really get a sense that they have it out for the movie.
Yeah.
And didn't Kevin Reynolds say that he overheard critics leaving the press screening, like muttering, well, it didn't suck. Like they were disappointed that it didn't suck, so that they couldn't write.
Right, exactly. Now they're forced to tell everybody that they really liked it. Yeah, exactly.
It reminds me of the sort of toxic fandom that you see now with like Star Wars fans. They want the movie to suck in a way, in a weird, twisted way. They want to hate it.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, I think it certainly is easier to talk about all the bad things. If a movie is truly bad, it's easy to talk about everything that's bad as opposed to why it's good.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's why this show is so hard sometimes, because it's like, well, it's good. What do we say? We love it. If we were doing a show about movies that were bad, we could go on for hours.
Exactly. Our boy Gene Siskel really didn't like this.
Another bombed hype to the gills was Waterworld, in which Kevin Costner's futuristic mariner actually did wear gills as he roamed the seas looking for fresh water and a civilization that had nearly destroyed itself. Waterworld was simply Mad Max on jet skis. Not original and always very grim. Just what we want from Kevin Costner in an action picture. He's miserable on screen to all people all the time.
Yeah, it's a real downer. And you know, when you think about these two movies and the resources that went into them and the millions and tens of millions of dollars, you realize what they didn't have were scripts.
Forget third act trouble. This is all just premise. There's no second act. There's no third act.
The star of Under Siege, Steven Seagal.
So Waterworld was nominated for an Oscar for Best Sound, and the category was presented by a weirdly bitter Steven Seagal.
I know what you're all thinking. What's Seagal doing up here presenting an Oscar for sound? Well, there's a reason. A couple years ago, Under Siege was nominated for Best Sound, and it lost. I was devastated, I was crushed, I was hurt, I was beside myself, but somehow I kind of got over it. And win or lose, when you're nominated for an Oscar, it's a big deal. And the Academy knows how to lift your spirits. If you don't win, sometimes you still get to present.
Didn't win, but it was nominated.
That's okay.
So it got a little love at award season.
Yeah.
But once again, now our last episode we didn't have any of these, but we're right back to the Razzies again. It was nominated for several Razzies. Worst Picture. It lost to Showgirls for Worst Picture. Costner was nominated for Worst Actor, I mean. Kevin Reynolds was nominated for Worst Director.
Oh, come on.
And Dennis Hopper was nominated for and won Worst Supporting Actor.
Come on.
He actually beat out Tim Curry for Congo as the diamond hunter Herkimer Homoka.
No, the diamonds are here.
Come on.
Come on, those were two of the highlights of the entire summer, those two characters.
Stop eating my sesame cake.
Costner and Reynolds actually worked together again, which is crazy. But they did. They worked on the Hatfields and McCoys, which I guess is an appropriate project for them to work on. But
yeah,
they just never learn. Or maybe they know that they're good together, even though they can't stand each other.
Right.
Universal Studios Hollywood brings you more action, more adventure, more thrills, and more fun than anyone else. And this holiday, we're bringing you even more. Come thrill to an incredible new adventure, Waterworld Live. It's Southern California's only new attraction, and it's only at Universal Studios. We blow everything else out of the water.
The Waterworld Live Sea War Spectacular stunt show, which is so great and is weirdly perfect because the movie itself is like a live theme park stunt show. And then now it's transformed from a movie back into a theme park stunt show at Universal Studios. That opened the same time the movie opened in 1995. And it's still there.
Still going today.
How many times have we seen that? You and I.
Every time we go.
Twice, right?
It's
every time we go.
Every time.
It's totally incoherent. This is the great thing about the Waterworld. It makes no sense as far as the story goes. You can't hear any of the dialogue for the most part because it's echoing through the thing.
Right.
It's just chaos. There's people falling in water. There's people jumping off jet skis. There's people starting on fire. It's complete madness and chaos, but it's awesome.
Yes. I mean, but it's cool because you just you feel the heat from the explosions. I mean, they actually have a plane come in and crash into the water and people get wet.
The show opened also at Universal Studios Japan, 2001, and in Singapore in 2010. The legacy of Waterworld lives on every single day, multiple times a day at Universal Studios in 3 different locations.
Yes, I, Deacon of Waterworld, celebrate the birth of a new nation. Trident is my destiny.
Hey, Deacon!
Hey, what? No, oh no, no!
The movie became a kind of cultural touchstone for excess and out of control production, replacing like Cleopatra and Ishtar and all those as like the whipping boy. It sort of still is, for better or for worse. Did you ever see the Simpsons bit with where Milhouse plays the Waterworld arcade game?
No.
It says, please deposit 40 quarters.
38, 39, 40 quarters. This better be good.
Game over. Please deposit 40 quarters.
What a rip!
So, final thoughts. It certainly resonates now more than ever with its ecological themes.
Yeah.
It's a ton of fun. You know, it's just, the movie is just cool. It's utterly unique within the post-apocalyptic genre.
Yeah, there's nothing like this one.
It kind of represents the kind of movies that aren't made anymore. It was actually, when it was made, it was like on the dividing line between physical live action staging, real stunts, real sets, and then transitioning into that prequel, Star Wars prequel, Lord of the Rings, like where everything is CG world.
Right.
And that sort of sense of creating scale was done in a computer.
Right. And even if you don't, and even if you watch the movie, if you haven't seen it yet, and you watch the movie and you don't like it, you still have to appreciate the fact that they made this. The practical effects, the stunts. I mean, like they made this. Like everything was against them, even from the very first shot. Wasn't working out, right? But they did it.
And let's bring Waterworld back and make it a cultural phenomenon. Where's the Hot Toys of Waterworld?
Yes.
Maybe if we start doing Waterworld cosplay. Dress up like the Deacon, dress up like Helen, dress up like the depth gauge guy. Make him a thing. Make him like a perennial convention cosplay character. The depth gauge guy.
Right? Be old Perv old Perv McGregor, By the way, like, aren't you wondering now, like now that like Enola and Helen are on the island with Gregor at the end, do you think he makes his move?
The Enforcer's there, though, too, so the Enforcer will keep things under control. Waterworld, a true cherry bomb. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, and never apologize for the movies you love.
Oh, thank God.
And it's been 20 years since Waterworld. With so many movies that got a bad rap back in the day being revisited, do you think that's a world worth revisiting?
Yeah, well, Waterworld is a really beloved movie around the world. People love Waterworld. Bad rap, but so what? It's like everybody's had something bad said about them that's probably not true.
Could you see that being something that would be successful if they were to redo it?
I don't think they'd have to redo it. I think they could just release it the way it is. If that was interesting, there'd be no reason to redo it.